Your mind is your most powerful tool or your worst enemy. Everything begins and ends in the space between your ears. How you think, what you believe, the emotions you allow to dominate, and the stories you choose to replay define the quality of your life. Mastering your mind is not about control in the strict sense, it's about awareness, discipline, and intentionality. It's about choosing what to focus on, how to respond, and which thoughts deserve your attention and energy. Most people live unconsciously. They wake up and immediately get pulled into the noise of the world. Notifications, headlines, opinions, comparisons. These external stimuli hijack the mind before it's even had a moment to breathe. The result is a restless, distracted, anxious existence. But when you begin to master your mind, you take back that power. You begin to shape your inner world deliberately. You don't become immune to difficulty, but you become unshakable amidst it. You are not your thoughts, but the awareness behind them. This truth is simple but transformative. Most people go through life without realizing this distinction. They get lost in their thoughts, pulled in different directions by the chaos inside their heads. Every emotion, every judgment, every fear is taken as truth. The mind whispers, and they obey. But when you begin to understand that you are not the voice in your head, but the one who hears it, everything starts to change. That space between you and your thoughts is where your power lives. It's where peace begins and mastery is born. Thoughts come and go. They rise without your permission and often disappear just as suddenly. Some are useful, some are painful, and many are simply noise. But they are not who you are. You don't control the first thought that enters your mind, but you do have control over what you do with it. You can observe it, question it, challenge it, or simply let it go. When you realize that thoughts are not commands, but options, your relationship with your mind transforms. You begin to guide it rather than be governed by it. You begin to live deliberately instead of automatically. The mastered mind understands this and moves with awareness. It does not suppress thoughts or pretend they don't exist. It acknowledges them with clarity and detachment. A negative thought arises, and instead of spiraling into self-doubt, the mastered mind notices it and investigates it. Where did this come from? Is it rooted in fear or past pain? Does it align with who I truly want to be? This inner dialogue, rooted in awareness, is the foundation of mental strength. You begin to live with intention. You become the driver, not the passenger. Most people never take the time to observe their minds. They live in reaction mode. A single critical thought, and their confidence drops. A past memory surfaces, and they relive it as if it's happening again. But your mind is not a perfect mirror of reality. It's a filter shaped by past experiences, fears, beliefs, and assumptions. If you don't learn to question it, you end up living in a version of life that's not even real. You suffer twice, once from the event and again from the meaning your mind assigns to it. Mastery is not about ignoring thoughts. It's about learning which ones deserve your energy. Imagine sitting quietly and noticing your thoughts like clouds passing in the sky. Some are dark and heavy, others are light and harmless. You don't try to chase them away. You don't argue with them. You just let them pass. This is the skill of mental detachment. It doesn't mean you don't care. It means you've learned not to fuse your identity with every mental event. You've learned that your true self is not the noise, but the stillness beneath it. That stillness is where clarity, peace, and strength are found. That stillness is your true home. When you live from that place of awareness, life becomes simpler. You stop being at war with your own mind. You understand that thoughts are like weather. They change, they shift, they pass, and just like weather, you don't have to take every storm personally. You learn to prepare, you learn to ride it out, but you no longer believe the storm is who you are. This creates a deep inner calm, a sense of rootedness that isn't shaken by circumstances. Your inner world becomes steady, even when the outer world is not. This practice of observing your thoughts creates mental space. In that space, you can pause before you react. You can choose your response. You can align your actions with your values instead of your fears. You stop saying things you regret. You stop making decisions from panic. You gain control not by force, but by awareness. That is real power. That is the power of mastering your mind. And when you master your mind, you begin to master your life. This awareness also builds self-compassion. You stop blaming yourself for every thought that arises. You recognize that your mind can produce unkind, anxious, or irrational thoughts without it meaning something is wrong with you. You learn to sit with discomfort without being consumed by it. You create enough inner safety to face what's hard without shutting down. That's what builds resilience. That's what builds a life of inner strength and outer purpose. There is great freedom in realizing you are not your thoughts. You are not your fears. You are not your insecurities. You are not the story your mind tells when you're tired or hurt. You are the observer, the witness, the conscious presence that sees it all. From that place, you can rewrite the narrative. You can create new beliefs. You can break free from patterns that once trapped you. You can choose a higher path, not because the thoughts disappeared, but because you no longer let them control you. The journey of mastering your mind begins here. With this single shift, you are not the storm. You are the sky it moves through. You are not the noise. You are the awareness behind it. You are not every thought you think. You are the one who chooses which ones to follow and which ones to release. That's the foundation of freedom. That's the beginning of transformation. That's where life changes from the inside out. Mastery begins with observing your inner world without judgment. This is where transformation takes root. Not in perfection or performance, but in presence and awareness. The first step to mastering your mind is not trying to fix yourself or suppress what you feel, but learning to watch what happens inside you with clarity and compassion. Your thoughts, emotions, and patterns are not enemies to defeat. They are signals, messages, and reflections that, when observed without judgment, reveal the truth about what's driving your life. Most people skip this step because it feels too quiet, too still, and too unfamiliar. They rush to distract themselves, change something externally, or label what they feel is wrong. But real change never begins in noisy. It starts in still observation, when you look at your thoughts and emotions as if you're watching someone else's movie. You create a space between you and what you're experiencing. In that space, you find power. You begin to understand what triggers you, what drives your fears, and what stories you've unconsciously told yourself for years. Most of our pain doesn't come from the experience itself, but from the judgment we attach to it. A feeling of sadness isn't the problem. Believing that you shouldn't feel sad, that sadness means you're weak or broken, is where the suffering begins. But when you drop the judgment and simply observe, this is sadness. I feel it in my chest. It's tight. It's heavy. You allow it to move through you. You create safety within yourself. You begin to trust your mind and body as they are, not only when they're performing well or feeling good. Observing without judgment doesn't mean being passive. It means being honest. It means being fully present with what is real inside you, without denying it, dramatizing it, or rushing to escape it. It means giving yourself permission to feel whatever you feel, and think whatever you think without labeling it good or bad. That doesn't make you weak, it makes you awake. Judgment clouds clarity. It pushes emotions into hiding. It causes resistance, and resistance creates suffering. But acceptance opens the door to change. When you can sit with a thought and say, "That's interesting," rather than "That's wrong," you shift from being reactive to being responsive. You begin to study your own mind like a scientist, not with shame, but with curiosity. This process builds emotional intelligence. You start recognizing the difference between thoughts and reality, between feelings and facts. You become skilled at asking questions like, "What is this emotion telling me?" or "Where did this thought originate?" Rather than immediately reacting. That self-inquiry, done without harshness, begins to soften the inner critic and awaken the inner guide. You stop being at war with yourself. You stop making every thought a battle. And in that peace, you gain power to choose what to believe, what to change, and what to release. The reason this approach works is because the mind doesn't grow through force, it grows through attention. What you observe with presence begins to shift on its own, not because you're fighting it, but because you're finally allowing it to be seen. And everything in you, even the darkest parts, just wants to be seen without being shamed. Mastering your mind doesn't require that you control every thought. It requires that you understand them, that you slow down long enough to hear what they're really saying beneath the surface. Often, what sounds like anger is fear. What looks like procrastination is perfectionism. What feels like numbness is unprocessed grief. But you can't heal what you won't see. You can't. Change what you won't face, and you won't face it if you judge it the moment it arises. This approach also builds deep self-trust. When you become someone who observes their inner world with care rather than criticism, you stop being afraid of yourself. You stop running from your feelings or trying to drown them in distraction. You start to believe that no matter what shows up inside you, you can handle it. That kind of self-trust is rare, but it's what real freedom feels like. It's not the absence of struggle, it's the presence of inner safety. You know that your thoughts don't define you. You know your emotions are temporary. You know that clarity will come if you stay present long enough. That's where strength lies, not in avoiding the storm, but in learning to watch it calmly from within. This practice also makes you a better human to others. When you stop judging yourself, you stop judging everyone else. When you make room for your own imperfections, you create space for others to be real with you too. Your relationships deepen, your patience grows, your empathy expands. Mastering your mind is not just about personal achievement, it's about becoming someone who brings peace into every room, simply because they've made peace within. You no longer need to control people or prove yourself, because you're anchored inside. You've done the work of watching your own inner chaos without flinching, and that calm becomes your strength. The truth is, the mind will always be busy. It will always think, analyze, remember, and imagine. That's its nature. Mastery isn't about silencing the mind, it's about changing your relationship with it. And the most powerful way to begin is by observing it without judgment. Over time, this becomes a habit. A thought arises, you notice it. An emotion flares, sighs, sit with it. A fear returns, you breathe and explore it. You stop being pulled in 10 directions. You start moving with clarity. You start leading your life from a place of wisdom instead of reaction. This is how you begin to master your mind. And once you do, everything else starts to align. Because the quality of your thoughts shapes the quality of your choices, and your choices build your life. Your mind becomes what you consistently feed it. Just like the body is shaped by what you eat, your thoughts, beliefs, emotions, and overall outlook are shaped by what you expose yourself to daily. The thoughts you entertain, the words you listen to, the people you spend time with, the content you consume, these are all forms of mental nutrition. Over time, they become the raw materials your mind uses to construct your reality. If you're feeding your mind negativity, gossip, fear, and constant comparison, your thoughts will reflect anxiety, envy, and insecurity. But if you're feeding your mind truth, growth, peace, and purpose, your thinking will elevate, your focus will sharpen, and your inner life will flourish. Everything you watch, read, hear, and scroll through is either strengthening or weakening your mindset. This is not always obvious in the moment. The effects are subtle but powerful. One negative article might not ruin your mindset, but the cumulative effect of constant negativity rewires your brain to expect the worst. One toxic conversation may seem harmless, but if your social environment constantly pulls you into drama or criticism, your mind will begin to adopt those patterns. Your environment is always programming you. If you're not intentionally shaping that programming, you're unconsciously absorbing someone else's agenda. To master your mind, you must become intentional about what you feed it. Just like someone committed to physical health avoids junk food and empty calories, you must learn to avoid mental junk content that serves no purpose other than to distract, divide, or deplete. Mindless scrolling, clickbait headlines, toxic online arguments, gossip-filled entertainment, or voices that constantly push fear and scarcity. All of these may seem harmless at first, but they accumulate, they cloud your judgment, they drain your energy, and they shape the lens through which you see the world. A mastered mind filters what it allows in. It asks, does this align with the life I want to create? Does this uplift my thinking or distort it? Does this open my heart or close? It's just as important as filtering out the negative is feeding your mind with strength and clarity. This means reading books that challenge you to grow, listening to voices that speak truth and wisdom, surrounding yourself with people who inspire discipline, purpose, and progress. The right message at the right time can shift the entire course of your thinking. A single sentence can break a long-standing belief that's held you back. A new perspective can open doors that once felt closed. But you won't stumble across those breakthroughs unless you're consistently seeking out content That nourishes your mind. Growth is not a what-I'm event, it's a daily decision. Every day you have the chance to feed your mind the kind of fuel that builds resilience and direction. Your internal dialogue is also shaped by what you feed your mind. If you constantly consume stories of failure, loss, fear, and division, your self-talk will mirror that. You'll start to doubt yourself. More, you'll assume things won't work out. You'll fear change and shrink away from challenges. But when you surround yourself with examples of courage, stories of persistence, teachings on discipline and inner strength, your mind absorbs that language. You begin to speak to yourself differently. You begin to coach yourself instead of criticize yourself. You begin to believe that you can move forward even when it's hard. What you feed your mind also determines how you handle stress. A mind that's constantly consuming fear-based content will panic under pressure. It will look for the worst-case scenario. It will assume defeat before trying. But a mind that's been fed principles of strength, stillness, and perspective will handle stress with maturity. It won't deny the challenge, but it won't exaggerate it either. It will breathe, assess, and respond with clarity. That calm doesn't come from wishful thinking, it comes from consistent mental conditioning. Just like athletes train their bodies for performance, you must train your mind for pressure. That training happens in what you feed it every day. Even your creativity and vision are shaped by what you expose your mind to. If all you consume is repetitive, shallow content, your thinking becomes narrow. Your ideas become limited. But when you feed your mind art, philosophy, beauty, diversity of thought, your creativity expands. Your mind connects new ideas. You begin to imagine possibilities you couldn't before. This kind of mental expansion doesn't happen by accident, it requires deliberate input. The more quality you pour in, the more insight you'll draw out. The people around you are also part of what you feed your mind. Your conversations are inputs. The tone, energy, and direction of those discussions shape your mindset. If you're always talking about problems, complaining, or gossiping, your mind learns to focus on what's missing and what's wrong. But if you're engaged in conversations about ideas, solutions, growth, and purpose, your mind learns to focus on what's possible. This is why environment matters so much. You're always being shaped. Mastery means choosing the people and places that shape you in the right direction. Even in silence, you're feeding your mind something. In those quiet moments, your thoughts replay. If you've been feeding your mind poison, silence becomes torment. But if you've been feeding it strength, silence becomes peace. Your inner world begins to reflect the quality of what you've consumed. This is how the loop works. What you feed your mind determines how you think, and how you think determines what you seek out. To break the cycle, you must start with the input. You must decide to raise the standard of what your mind consumes. Mastering your mind is not about achieving some perfect state where no negativity exists. It's about creating awareness of your mental diet and taking responsibility for what you allow in. It's about becoming more conscious of what shapes you. Your thoughts build your habits. Your habits build your character. Your character builds your destiny. And it all begins with what you feed your mind. If you want to change your life, change the source of your thoughts. If you want a stronger mind, start giving it stronger fuel. What you put in will always come out. Nourish your mind with intention and watch how your life begins to align. Emotional discipline is the foundation of inner peace. It is the ability to feel fully without being ruled by those feelings. It's not about denying or suppressing emotions, but understanding them, managing them, and channeling them in ways that serve your growth instead of sabotaging it. Most people believe that peace comes when circumstances are perfect, but true peace begins when the inner world is no longer at the mercy of every emotional wave. When you master your emotions, you begin to master your decisions, your energy, and your direction. The chaos outside no longer has the power to disturb the calm within. Every day, you are confronted with situations that can trigger a range of emotions: anger, sadness, anxiety, frustration, jealousy, disappointment. These emotions are part of being human. They are natural, valid, and sometimes necessary. But the problem begins when emotions take the driver's seat and start running your life. When you speak from anger, you often hurt others. When you act from fear, you miss opportunities. When you drown in sadness, you lose sight of the light still present. Emotional discipline is the skill that helps you pause, reflect, and choose your response rather than react impulsively. It is what gives you the power to be still in the storm and to move with wisdom, instead of being pushed by impulse. Mastering your emotions doesn't mean you don't feel deeply. It means you've created enough space inside yourself to hold those emotions without being controlled by them. You can feel anger without becoming destructive. You can feel sadness without falling into despair. You can feel fear without becoming paralyzed. Emotional discipline allows you to name what you feel without letting it name you. It teaches you to sit with discomfort, to listen to what emotions are signaling, and then to respond from a grounded place. This response is where true power lives. Anyone can react, but very few have the strength to choose a mindful response. In a moment of intensity, when you cultivate emotional discipline, you begin to trust yourself more. You know you can handle difficult conversations without exploding or shutting down. You know you can walk through stress without collapsing. You know that even when emotions flare up, you have the tools to navigate them. This trust creates stability. It reduces anxiety and increases confidence. Because when you are no longer afraid of your own reactions, you become more free. You stop avoiding situations out of fear of how you'll feel. You stop running from discomfort. You begin to meet life head-on with steady eyes and an open heart. Emotional discipline is built through awareness. It starts with noticing your emotions as they arise, not judging them, not fighting them, just noticing. What am I feeling right now? What triggered this feeling? Where is it showing up in my body? What is this emotion trying to tell me? These questions bring you back into the present moment. They create a gap between feeling and reaction. In that gap, you can breathe, you can reflect, you can choose. This gap is where mastery begins. The more you practice noticing without reacting, the stronger your emotional muscles become. Another important part of emotional discipline is self-regulation. This means finding healthy ways to soothe and ground yourself in moments of emotional intensity. It could be taking deep breaths, walking away for a few minutes, writing down your thoughts, praying, or talking to someone you trust. It's not about pretending you're okay when you're not. It's about honoring what you feel while also protecting your peace. It's about learning to hold space for your own emotions without needing to dump them on others or turn them inward in destructive ways. Emotional discipline also means understanding the difference between reacting emotionally and living emotionally. Emotions are indicators, not instructions. They tell you what matters, what hurts, what needs attention, but they are not always accurate in their interpretations. Just because you feel rejected doesn't mean you are. Just because you feel afraid doesn't mean something is truly dangerous. The disciplined mind listens to emotion with empathy, but responds with wisdom. It combines heart and logic. It doesn't ignore feeling, but it doesn't bow to it blindly either. This balance creates integrity. It makes you emotionally mature, reliable, and strong. Relationships thrive when emotional discipline is present. Conflict is handled with care instead of aggression. Misunderstandings are clarified instead of amplified. Boundaries are respected, not violated. Emotional discipline allows you to hold space for others without losing yourself. It helps you express your truth without cruelty and receive truth from others without defensiveness. It allows for deep connection because people feel safe with someone who can handle emotion without being swallowed by it. Emotional discipline turns reaction into reflection and turns conflict into understanding. The path to emotional discipline also includes forgiveness. Holding on to resentment or guilt weighs down the mind and poisons the heart. The disciplined mind chooses peace over punishment. It understands that forgiveness is not forgetting, but releasing the grip that pain has on your emotional energy. It lets go not because the past was okay, but because carrying it forward is too heavy. Forgiveness clears space for new thoughts, new emotions, and new beginnings. It is one of the highest forms of emotional maturity and a true marker of inner mastery. Building emotional discipline takes time and consistency. It requires self-compassion, patience, and humility. You will fail sometimes. You will react when you wish you hadn't. But each time you come back, observe, reflect, and try again, you strengthen the path. Over time, your nervous system becomes more resilient, your self-awareness sharpens, your peace deepens. The mind that was once a battlefield becomes a sanctuary. The life that once felt overwhelming begins to feel aligned. Mastering your emotions is not about becoming emotionless. It's about feeling fully and acting wisely. It's about recognizing that peace is not the absence of emotion, but the presence of inner strength. When you master your emotional world, you free yourself from the chains of reactivity. You rise above circumstances. You respond with grace, and in doing so, you create a life that reflects clarity, presence, and purpose. That is the essence of mastering your mind. That is the foundation of mastering your life. Focus is a superpower in a distracted world. In an age where your attention is constantly being pulled in 100 directions, the ability to concentrate deeply and intentionally is one of the most powerful skills you can develop. The modern world is built to steal your focus. Notifications, advertisements, endless social media scrolling, breaking news, constant multitasking, everything around you is designed to interrupt your train of thought. The result is a scattered mind, a restless heart, and a life that feels busy but not meaningful. Mastering your focus is not just about being more productive. It's about reclaiming your mind from the noise so you can live with clarity, depth, and purpose. When you train your focus, you begin to take control of your time and your energy. You stop being reactive and start being intentional. Instead of jumping from task to task, you become someone who moves with direction. You start to recognize what truly matters and commit to it fully. This deep commitment allows you to create work that is thoughtful and impactful. It helps you experience relationships with presence and connection. It lets you enjoy quiet moments without needing to escape them. Focus grounds you in the present moment, and that is where real life happens. A distracted mind is a weak mind. It's not because it lacks intelligence, but because it lacks discipline. When your focus is always being hijacked, your thoughts become shallow and fragmented. You struggle to finish what you start. You lose confidence in your ability to stay consistent. Over time, this erodes your sense of power. But when you start to strengthen your focus, even in small ways, you begin to build trust in yourself. You start to see that you are capable of sustained attention. You begin to remember that your mind doesn't have to chase every distraction. It can stay. It can breathe. It can go deep. Focus is not just about doing more. It's about doing what matters with full attention. It's not about speed. It's about depth. In a world that celebrates being busy, real mastery comes from being focused. A single hour of focused work can accomplish more than an entire day of half-hearted multitasking. When your energy is concentrated, you enter a state of flow where your best thinking happens. Time feels different. Ideas connect more clearly. Problems become easier to solve. Creativity emerges without force. This is not a gift reserved for a few. It is a skill anyone can develop through practice. To master your focus, you must first protect it. This means setting boundaries with your time and environment. It means turning off unnecessary notifications, saying no to distractions, and creating spaces where your mind can work without interruption. It means scheduling time for deep work, just like you would schedule a meeting or an appointment. Focus doesn't just happen, it is created by design. You must build a life that supports your concentration instead of constantly breaking it. The world will not make this easy for you, but the more you guard your focus, the more you realize how valuable it is. Mental clutter is another enemy of focus. When your mind is filled with unfinished tasks, unresolved emotions, and constant input, it becomes hard to settle into a state of clarity. You must learn to quiet the mental noise. This could mean journaling to clear your head, meditating to create space between thoughts, or simply taking breaks to reset your attention. You cannot focus deeply if your mind is overloaded. Clarity requires stillness. Focus thrives in simplicity. The less you carry mentally, the more energy you have to give to what's in front of you. The quality of your focus is also determined by the quality of your purpose. When you know why something matters, it becomes easier to concentrate on it. A wandering mind is often a sign of a wandering heart. When you align your focus with your values, with the things that light your soul on fire, your attention becomes naturally disciplined. You don't need external motivation because the internal drive is already strong. Purpose fuels focus, clarity sustains it. Mastering your mind means being honest about what deserves your energy and what doesn't. Distraction isn't just a habit, it's also a way of avoiding discomfort. Sometimes, we lose focus not because we're lazy, but because we're scared. Scared of failure, scared of not being good enough, scared of facing ourselves. So we run to distractions because they feel easier than staying present. But every time you choose to stay with the task, to breathe through the discomfort, to finish what you start, you reclaim a piece of your power. Focus becomes not just a mental skill, but a spiritual practice, a way of returning to yourself again and again. The people you surround yourself with also affect your focus. If you are constantly around chaos, gossip, and negativity, your mind will mirror that energy. But when you surround yourself with people who are disciplined, creative, intentional, and focused, you rise to that level. Energy is contagious. Protect your environment as fiercely as you protect your thoughts. Focus is easier to maintain when your world supports it. Focus is not about being rigid. It's about being fully engaged. It's about showing up to your life without distraction. When you give your full presence to your work, your relationships, your healing, and your purpose, you begin to live deeply instead of just existing. You experience more peace because your energy is no longer scattered. You experience more fulfillment because you're not wasting time on what doesn't matter. You experience more power because your mind is no longer a battlefield, it becomes a tool. You know how to use. In a world full of noise, a quiet and focused mind is rare, but it's also magnetic. It creates excellence. It attracts opportunity. It builds self-trust. It opens doors that hustle alone cannot. When you master your focus, you master your time. When you master your time, you master your results. And when you master your mind, you begin to live with a sense of calm determination that nothing external can take away. This is the true power of focus. It is not about controlling the world around you. It is about leading the world within you. Purpose gives your mind direction and strength. When your life is anchored in a deeper meaning, your thoughts stop wandering aimlessly and begin to align with your goals, values, and vision. A mind without purpose is like a ship without a compass, drifting with every wave of emotion or external distraction. But when you live with purpose, your mind knows where it's going. It has a destination, a mission, a reason to endure discomfort and stay disciplined. Purpose makes pain meaningful, sacrifice valuable, and effort worthwhile. It takes your energy and focuses it like a laser. It gives your mind a reason to stay sharp and a path to follow. Even in the face of resistance, the human mind is constantly searching for meaning. It wants to understand why it is doing something and what it's all leading to. Without that clarity, the mind grows restless, anxious, and scattered. But when it connects with a strong sense of purpose, it becomes more peaceful and powerful. Purpose organizes your thoughts. It filters what deserves your attention and what doesn't. It quiets the noise by giving you a deeper yes, one that helps you say no to distractions, temptations, and short-term gratification. It reminds you of who you are and what you stand for, especially when life gets difficult. Strength of mind doesn't come from simply willing yourself to be tough. It comes from knowing that what you are doing matters. When you are clear about your why, you can face the how with courage. Purpose transforms obstacles into stepping stones. It shifts your mindset from victimhood to responsibility. You stop asking why this is happening to you and start asking what this is teaching you. You stop waiting for things to get easier and start rising to become stronger. The same challenges that once overwhelmed you become manageable because your mind is focused not on the pain, but on the outcome. Purpose reorients your focus from struggle to significance. Purpose also brings resilience. Life will test your patience, your faith, your consistency. There will be moments when everything in you wants to quit, when your thoughts try to convince you that it's not worth it, that you're not enough, or that it's too late. But purpose gives you the mental strength to keep going. It becomes the inner voice that says this matters, keep walking. It becomes the quiet anchor that holds you steady in the middle of chaos. You may not always feel motivated, but purpose keeps you disciplined. You may feel tired, but purpose reminds you why you started. When your mind is connected to a reason bigger than comfort, you stop chasing ease and start building endurance. Your thoughts will always follow the direction of your purpose. When your purpose is rooted in contribution, growth, and service, your mind becomes more creative and solutions-oriented. It starts asking, what can I build, what can I give, how can I grow? Instead of why is life so hard, why me, what's the point? This shift in thought creates a shift in reality. You begin to attract opportunities, clarity, and people that align with your purpose. Your energy becomes magnetic because it is focused. You're no longer pulled in 1,000 directions, trying to please everyone or achieve everything. You know your lane and you stay in it with confidence. Clarity of purpose also reduces mental fatigue. Decision-making becomes easier because you have a clear filter. If it aligns with your purpose, it's a yes. If it doesn't, it's a no. You don't waste energy chasing validation or proving your worth, because your purpose is not based on external approval. It's based on internal conviction. This inner clarity frees your mind from constant overthinking, comparison, and doubt. It gives you peace because you're not trying to be everything to everyone. You're simply committed to becoming who you were meant to be. Purpose brings structure to your day and direction to your goals. When you wake up with purpose, you stop hitting snooze on your life. You stop drifting from task to task and start moving with intention. You give your mind something to work toward, and in return, your mind begins to serve you better. It becomes more focused, less distracted, more resilient, and less reactive. Your thoughts begin to align with your values, and your actions begin to align with your vision. This alignment is the beginning of mastery. It's the moment you stop surviving and start building something that lasts. Even in moments of failure, purpose keeps your mind from collapsing. It reframes setbacks as lessons. It helps you see that the journey is part of the reward. You don't crumble because one door closes. You trust that it's guiding you somewhere better. You don't give up because of one hard day. You know that every great life is built on the foundation of persistence. Purpose gives your mind perspective. It keeps you from making permanent decisions based on temporary emotions. It reminds you that you're playing the long game, that progress takes time, and that struggle is not the opposite of success, but the path to it. A purpose-driven mind also cultivates gratitude. When you know what you're working toward, you begin to appreciate every small win. You see each step as part of a bigger picture. Your mind starts focusing more on what's right than what's missing. You celebrate growth instead of chasing perfection. This attitude feeds your motivation and strengthens your self-belief. It makes the journey more fulfilling because you're not just waiting for some far-off result. You're living your purpose every day through your choices, your mindset, and your presence. Living with purpose is not about having everything figured out. It's about having a reason to keep figuring it out. It's about staying committed to becoming the best version of yourself, even when you don't feel ready or the path isn't clear. When your mind is anchored in purpose, it doesn't need all the answers. It just needs direction. That direction gives your thoughts structure, your actions meaning, and your life power. Master your purpose, and you master your mind. Master your mind, and you begin to master every aspect of your life. Stillness reveals truths that noise hides. In the fast pace of the modern world, where every moment is filled with motion, sound, distraction, and urgency, the mind rarely gets a chance to breathe. Every second is occupied scrolling, replying, watching, reacting. But the truth is, the deepest insights, the most honest reflections, and the clearest answers do not rise in chaos. They rise in stillness. When the outer world quiets down, the inner world speaks up. When you allow silence to settle in, you begin to hear the voice beneath the noise, the voice of truth, intuition, wisdom, and clarity that has been waiting to be noticed. The mind is not designed to function well under constant stimulation. It needs space to process, to reflect, to rest, and to reset. But the culture of constant doing trains us to fear stillness. Silence feels uncomfortable because it exposes what we've been avoiding. It reveals the thoughts we've buried under busyness, but those thoughts carry messages. That discomfort holds answers. Every unhealed wound, ignored emotion, or unaligned choice rises to the surface in stillness, not to torment you, but to free you. The truths that noise hides are often the very truths you need in order to grow, to heal, and to step into the next version of yourself. Stillness is not the absence of movement. It's the presence of awareness. It's the moment when you stop running long enough to notice what's really going on inside your mind. It's the moment when clarity surfaces not because you chased it, but because you created enough space for it to emerge. When you sit in silence, without a phone, without a distraction, without needing to be productive, you begin to witness what your mind has been carrying. You see the thoughts that repeat. You notice the stories you tell yourself. You observe the fears you avoid. And from that place of observation, you begin to understand, not with panic, not with judgment, but with compassion and insight. Mastering your mind means becoming comfortable with stillness. It means choosing moments of silence not as empty time, but as essential time. In that silence, you reconnect with your core. You get to ask yourself real questions without the world answering for you. What do I really want? Who am I becoming? What am I pretending not to know? These are the questions that surface when you dare to be still. And while the answers might not come immediately, the space you create invites them to arrive. Without the interruption of noise, the truth has room to breathe. Stillness also sharpens focus. When the mind is constantly stimulated, its attention gets diluted. But when you practice stillness, even for a few minutes a day, you train your mind to return to the present moment. You teach it to resist the urge to escape. You strengthen the muscles of patience, awareness, and presence. And those muscles serve you in everything you do, whether it's your work, your relationships, or your spiritual journey. A mind that knows how to be still can also hold deeper focus, greater empathy, and more intentional thought. In stillness, you also begin to notice patterns. You see what triggers your anxiety. You recognize the thoughts that drain you. You become aware of the beliefs that limit you. And with awareness comes choice. You can't change what you're not conscious of. But once you see a pattern clearly, you can decide whether it serves you or not. This is how transformation begins, not with force, but with awareness. And awareness is born in stillness. Many people avoid stillness because they're afraid of what they'll find. But the truth is, nothing in your mind can harm you more than your refusal to face it. Avoidance gives power to fear. Presence dissolves it. When you sit with what's real, whether it's grief, doubt, confusion, or longing, you take away its ability to control you. You no longer need to distract yourself because you've built the strength to be with yourself. That's what stillness gives you. It builds inner capacity. It teaches you that you are safe in your own presence. You stop running from your thoughts and start listening to them with calm attention. Stillness also connects you to something deeper than logic. It connects you to intuition, that quiet knowing that doesn't shout, but whispers, that subtle feeling that guides you toward truth even when your mind is full of noise. In the stillness, you hear it more clearly. You start to feel what is aligned, what is off, what needs to be released. This inner compass is always available, but it gets drowned out by the mental clutter of everyday life. To access it, you must slow down. You must pause. You must create space. Even creativity is born in stillness. The greatest ideas often come, not when you're trying hard to think of them, but when you're resting, walking in nature, or sitting in silence. The mind needs space to connect the dots, to imagine, to dream beyond the obvious. Stillness opens the door to that space. It removes the layers of stress, urgency, and noise that block insight from rising. In those moments of pause, solutions appear. Possibilities expand. The mind returns to its natural rhythm, calm, curious, and creative. Practicing stillness is not always easy. It requires intention. You have to choose to unplug. You have to resist the urge to fill every gap with noise. But the reward is unmatched. A mind that knows how to be still is a mind that cannot be easily shaken. It doesn't panic in silence. It doesn't need constant input to feel alive. It finds power in presence, peace in simplicity, clarity in quiet. Stillness becomes your secret weapon, a tool that helps you return to yourself in a world that constantly tries to pull you away. Mastering your mind is not about controlling every thought. It's about creating the conditions for truth to rise. It's about learning to be still long enough to see clearly, to hear what matters, to remember who you are beneath the layers of noise. In stillness, you don't lose touch with the world. You reconnect with it through a deeper lens. You begin to live not from reaction, but from awareness. And from that awareness, you build a life rooted in peace, presence, and purpose. Forgiveness clears the mind for growth. Holding on to resentment, anger, guilt, or regret clutters the mental space needed for clarity and transformation. The human mind cannot function at its highest potential when it's weighed down by the past, every grudge, every unresolved memory. Every bitter replay of what went wrong becomes a chain that ties the mind to pain. No matter how smart, capable, or driven someone is, if the mind is filled with unhealed wounds, progress becomes heavy, slow, and limited. Forgiveness is not about forgetting or excusing what happened. It's about setting yourself free so your mind can focus forward instead of being trapped in reverse. The mind feeds on thoughts, and thoughts carry energy. When those thoughts are rooted in blame or self-hate, they become toxic. They eat away at your peace. They fuel anxiety, trigger emotional reactivity, and limit your ability to trust, connect, and grow. Even when you're trying to build something new, those lingering thoughts of betrayal or failure whisper that it's not safe to let go. But growth requires space. It needs fresh energy. It needs the mental clarity that only forgiveness can give. Forgiveness is not a weakness. It is a strength that reflects a deep level of emotional discipline and inner freedom. When you forgive, you are not saying that what happened was okay. You are not pretending that the pain didn't matter. You are simply choosing to stop letting that pain occupy your mental and emotional space. You are acknowledging the hurt and then choosing to heal. This decision is powerful. It allows your mind to reclaim the energy it was using to hold grudges, replay arguments, or resent people who may never apologize. That energy can now be redirected toward your growth, your purpose, and your peace. Forgiveness clears out the noise so you can hear your own thoughts again, think clearly again, and dream freely again. A mind that forgives also begins to see with more compassion. You realize that people hurt others from their own pain, fear, or ignorance. This doesn't excuse harmful behavior, but it helps you detach from the need to carry the wound forever. You stop taking everything personally. You stop believing that someone else's actions define your worth. Forgiveness gives you perspective. It helps you rise above the level of reaction and begin responding with wisdom. It teaches the mind that peace is more valuable than pride, that healing is more powerful than holding on. That growth happens when you choose freedom over control. Sometimes the hardest forgiveness is the one you must extend to yourself. The mistakes you made, the opportunities you missed, the times you stayed too long or left too early, the words you said in anger, the moments you weren't your best. Carrying guilt or shame creates mental tension. It becomes a loop of self-punishment that prevents you from believing in your ability to grow. But when you forgive yourself, you begin to view your past not as a life sentence, but as a lesson. You stop defining yourself by your worst moment. You allow your mind to evolve beyond who you used to be. Self-forgiveness does not mean you are proud of everything you've done. It means you are wise enough to learn, strong enough to change, and compassionate enough to accept your humanity. You cannot become your best self while constantly shaming your former self. You cannot build something beautiful while believing you are broken. Forgiveness clears the fog. It allows your mind to operate from love, not fear, from possibility, not punishment, from awareness, not avoidance. This inner shift is essential for mastery. It opens the door to confidence, focus, and self-respect. Growth requires vulnerability. It requires facing your past with honesty, not denial. When your mind is consumed with resentment or guilt, it avoids that vulnerability. It distracts, defends, or deflects. But when you forgive, you disarm the defenses. You soften into truth. You make peace with what was so you can build what will be. Forgiveness is the beginning of inner alignment. Your thoughts, emotions, and actions stop fighting each other. They begin to work together. This harmony brings mental clarity, emotional freedom, and spiritual strength. You also become mentally lighter. The burden of resentment, even if unspoken, is exhausting. It takes effort to stay angry. It takes energy to hold a grudge. Forgiveness releases that burden. It feels like unclenching a fist you've held for too long. It brings a wave of relief, of openness, of new possibility. The mind no longer needs to calculate revenge, replay scenarios, or carry invisible battles. It becomes more available to the present moment, more attuned to the good, more open to connection. This mental lightness creates space for creativity, for courage, for forward momentum. Forgiveness strengthens emotional intelligence. It helps you recognize your triggers, process your emotions, and respond from a grounded place. You start to see patterns in yourself and others without judgment. You stop being a prisoner of your reactions. This mental maturity becomes your advantage in your work, your relationships, and your goals. The ability to forgive quickly and wisely allows you to move forward with less emotional baggage. You stop letting past pain define your future vision. You start making choices based on who you want to become, not what you've been through. The journey of forgiveness is not always linear. There are days when old wounds rise again, when a memory reopens the pain, when the mind wants to return to resentment. That's okay. Forgiveness is a practice, not a moment. Each time you choose to release instead of relive, you're training your mind to prioritize peace. You're reinforcing the belief that your growth matters more than your grudges, that your future deserves more attention than your past. And over time, forgiveness becomes not just something you do, it becomes who you are. To master your mind is to clear it of what no longer serves you, to let go of the mental weight that keeps you stuck. Forgiveness is one of the most powerful ways to do that. It does not make you weak, it makes you wise. It frees the mind from bitterness and opens it to wisdom. It releases pain and makes space for peace. It transforms stories of hurt into lessons of strength, and it creates the mental environment where true growth can finally take root. Your identity is shaped by your repeated thoughts, the way you see yourself, the way you act, the way you interpret the world around you. It all begins in the thoughts you think every day. These thoughts form the foundation of your beliefs, and over time, those beliefs become the blueprint for how you live. You are not simply born with a fixed identity. You build it moment by moment, choice by choice, thought by thought. Every time you think I'm not good enough, or I can't do this, or I'm always failing, you reinforce a version of yourself that lives according to those limitations. But when you shift those thoughts to I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm capable, you begin to shape a new identity, one that aligns with confidence, growth, and power. The mind is a powerful architect. It constructs your self-image based on the thoughts you feed it consistently. These thoughts may not even be conscious often. They are silent scripts playing in the background of your daily life. They influence your posture, your tone, your decisions, your habits. If you consistently think you are unworthy of love, you will behave in ways that push people away. If you constantly doubt your potential, you will self-sabotage opportunities without realizing it. The mind does not care whether your thoughts are true or not. It simply accepts repetition as truth. What you repeat, you believe, and what you believe, you become. This is why mental awareness is so important in the journey of mastering your life. Until you become conscious of your repeated thoughts, you will continue living out patterns that no longer serve you. You might think you're stuck because of external circumstances, but often you're stuck in a loop of internal dialogue that keeps replaying the same limiting beliefs. The good news is that the same way you were shaped by old thoughts, you can be reshaped by new ones. You can interrupt the old story and begin to tell a better one. You can rewire your self-image by consistently choosing thoughts that support your growth. To do this, you must first become an observer of your mind. Pay attention to what you say to yourself when you make a mistake, when you wake up in the morning, when you're faced with a challenge. Are your thoughts helping you or hurting you? Are they lifting you or limiting you? Most people never pause to evaluate their inner voice. They simply absorb it as truth. But that voice can be reprogrammed. It can be trained to support you, guide you, and remind you of your strength. It starts with awareness. You cannot change what you do not notice. Repetition is the language of the mind. This means that changing your identity is not about one powerful thought, it's about a consistent practice of thinking in alignment with who you want to become. If you want to be more confident, start thinking like a confident person would. Not once, not occasionally, but every day. If you want to be disciplined, begin repeating the thoughts of someone who honors their time and responsibilities. The mind adapts to what it hears most. The more you feed it empowering thoughts, the more those thoughts become natural, automatic, and part of your identity. The stories you tell yourself shape the limits you place on your life. If you tell yourself you're bad with money, you'll make choices that reinforce that story. If you believe you're not worthy of success, you'll shrink away from opportunity. But when you rewrite those stories, when you begin to tell yourself you are learning, capable, deserving, and evolving, your identity begins to shift. You stop waiting for proof and start creating it. You stop living from old wounds and start living from new possibilities. Your thoughts become the soil in which your future grows. The most powerful transformations begin in the mind. External changes are temporary if they are not backed by an internal shift in identity. This is why so many people revert to old habits after making progress they haven't yet changed. How they see themselves. Lasting change requires a new way of thinking, one that is repeated so consistently that it becomes who you are. You must think like the person you want to become before you see the results. Identity leads behavior. Behavior shapes outcomes. But it all starts with the mind. Even your emotional patterns are shaped by repeated thoughts. If you consistently think you are alone or unsupported, you will feel anxious and disconnected. But if you feed your mind thoughts of connection, faith, and self-trust, your emotional world begins to reflect that. Thoughts become feelings, and feelings become experiences. When you master your thinking, you master your emotional state. You become less reactive, more grounded, and more in control of your inner world. This emotional steadiness strengthens your identity because it allows you to show up consistently, regardless of circumstances. Habits also reinforce identity, and habits begin with thoughts. The thought "I don't feel like doing this" leads to procrastination. The thought "I always finish what I start" leads to discipline. What you think before you act determines how you act, and repeated actions shape how you see yourself. If you want to build a new identity, attach it to small, consistent actions driven by intentional thoughts. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you prove that you are reliable. Every time you push through discomfort, you prove that you are resilient. These mental victories accumulate. They form the foundation of a stronger identity. Mastering your mind is not about controlling every thought. It's about choosing which ones you want to repeat. It's about becoming so familiar with empowering thoughts that they begin to lead your life. The mind will always think. Your job is to direct its thinking. Guide it toward thoughts that serve your growth. Replace old scripts with new language. Speak to yourself with the tone of a coach, not a critic. You are not stuck with the identity you inherited or built unconsciously. You can rebuild it with clarity, intention, and repetition. Every great transformation begins with a single thought. I am more than this. I can change. I deserve better. I will grow. These thoughts may seem small, but when repeated with belief and backed with action, they become the seeds of an entirely new identity. You do not have to wait for the world to believe in you. Start with your own thoughts. Shape them with care. Repeat them with conviction. Build the identity that reflects your highest self, and your life will rise to meet it. Mastering your mind is the first step to mastering your life. Every action you take, every word you speak, every decision you make begins first as a thought. The quality of your thoughts influences the quality of your choices, and your choices shape your life. If your mind is constantly reactive, fearful, distracted, or negative, it will be nearly impossible to build a life of clarity, purpose, and peace. But when you learn how to lead your mind instead of being led by it, you begin to take back control. You stop living on autopilot and start living with intention. Mastery over the mind is not about perfection, it's about awareness, direction, and discipline. The mind is like a garden. Whatever you plant and nurture will grow. If you allow weeds of doubt, fear, resentment, and self-sabotage to take root, they will overrun your thinking. But if you plant thoughts of courage, gratitude, faith, and focus, you will begin to see your life shift. The problem is that most people never take the time to tend to their inner garden. They let old programming, negative beliefs, and external noise take over. They feed their mind with fear-based content, toxic comparison, and emotional reactivity, without realizing the damage it's doing. Mastering your mind starts with recognizing that you are the gatekeeper of your thoughts. You decide what stays and what gets released. Your mind is a powerful tool, but it is not always accurate. It often repeats patterns from the past, projects worst-case scenarios, and interprets the world through the lens of fear or insecurity. Just because your mind tells you something doesn't mean it's true. Mastery requires you to separate truth from story, intuition from impulse, wisdom from noise. You must learn to question your thoughts, not obey them blindly. When you can observe your mind without becoming your mind, You unlock freedom. You realize you are not your thoughts, you are the awareness behind them. From that awareness, you gain choice. And with choice, you gain power. A mastered mind leads to emotional regulation. Instead of reacting to every trigger, you develop the strength to pause, breathe, and respond. You stop letting your emotions hijack your behavior. You create space between stimulus and response, and in that space lies your growth. When your mind is calm, your emotions follow. When your mind is grounded, your actions reflect that stability. You begin to live from a place of clarity, not chaos. You make better decisions, handle conflict with grace, and stay focused even when life gets messy. Emotional maturity begins with mental mastery. Discipline is born in the mind. The ability to stay consistent, push through resistance, and show up even when it's hard starts with how you talk to yourself. If your mind is full of excuses and self-doubt, you will struggle to build habits that support your growth. But if your inner voice is firm, encouraging, and focused, you become unstoppable. Discipline is not about being harsh with yourself, it's about being loyal to your goals. It's about keeping your word to yourself. A mastered mind knows when to rest, but also knows when to rise. It doesn't negotiate with laziness. It moves in alignment with vision, not emotion. When you master your mind, you also master your energy. Mental clutter is exhausting. Overthinking, worrying, comparing, and second-guessing drain your energy more than any physical task. But when your thoughts are organized, clear, and aligned, you feel energized and focused. You stop wasting energy on things you can't control. You stop letting small problems steal your peace. You channel your energy into what matters. And that focused energy creates momentum. You become more productive not because you're working harder, but because you're thinking better. Your mental clarity becomes your advantage. Self-belief is built in the mind. If your thoughts are constantly criticizing, doubting, or shaming you, you will never feel confident no matter how much you achieve. But if your thoughts uplift, encourage, and support you, your confidence grows from within. Mastering your mind means speaking to yourself with the same kindness and belief you offer to others. It means rewriting the inner dialogue that tells you you're not enough. It means choosing to believe in your ability to grow, adapt, and rise even when you feel uncertain. Confidence is not the absence of fear, it's the presence of trust in your inner voice. Relationships improve when your mind is healthy. You stop projecting your insecurities onto others. You stop seeking validation from outside sources. You begin to communicate more clearly, love more deeply, and listen more openly. A mastered mind is less reactive, less defensive, and more present. You stop trying to control others and start focusing on how you show up. You become a safe space because you are mentally and emotionally steady. People feel your peace because you've built it within yourself. Mastering your mind also connects you to your purpose. When the mind is scattered or clouded by fear, your purpose feels distant and confusing. But when you quiet the noise, you begin to hear the deeper call. You begin to feel drawn to what matters most. You recognize what drains you and what fuels you. Purpose becomes clearer not because the world changes, but because your perception sharpens. You no longer chase every shiny object you align with. What truly matters? Purpose isn't something you find outside, it's something you remember inside. A clear and focused mind helps you remember who you are and why you're here. Growth begins the moment you decide to take responsibility for your thoughts. You stop blaming others for how you feel. You stop waiting for circumstances to change. You realize that the power has been in your hands all along. Your mind can be your best friend or your biggest enemy. It can push you forward or pull you back. But it is yours to train, to lead, to master. And once you do, your life begins to shift. Not because life gets easier, but because you become stronger, wiser, and more intentional. Mastering your mind is not a what-I'm event. It is a daily practice, a commitment to awareness, to intention, to growth. Some days will be easier than others. Some thoughts will be harder to break than others. But every time you choose a better thought, you become a better version of yourself. Every time you take the reins of your mind, you move closer to mastering your life. The journey begins within. It begins with a thought. It begins with a decision. To lead your mind instead of being led by it. To create your life instead of waiting for it. to rise above fear, doubt, and distraction and step into the power that's already inside you. Mastering your mind is a lifelong journey. There is no finish line, only deeper layers of awareness and peace. It's not about perfection, but progress. You will slip. You will have days where your mind runs wild. But with every breath, you can return, you can realign, you can recommit to mental strength. Your mind doesn't have to be your enemy, it can become your greatest ally. When you master it, you master how you show up in every area of life. Because in the end, your outer world will always reflect your inner world. Chaos within leads to chaos outside. Peace within leads to clarity and power. When you master your mind, you lead your life instead of being led by it. You respond rather than react. You create rather than cope. You rise again and again. No matter what comes your way, that is the path. That is the power. That is the real freedom.